neighborhood houses and church houses. We are dim. So, all together, we guide and instruct through them. We listen to them. We protect them. Our excellence is in them. Our research seeks out them. Our scholarship elevates them. Our best selves are in them. In my purposeful pursuits, I want to be them. Ashe. Ashe. So we're going to be unapologetic by using that word, them, because we know now what we really mean, right? All right. And so if we situate, next slide, them, I want us to first unpack then, well, what gives us evidence of them? The first thing that gives us evidence, them, as for those of us who stand in this particular Christian tradition, is Imago Dei. So we profess on a regular basis, right, that we are made in the image and likeness of the ultimate reality, the solvent of the universe, the one known by many names. So if we are the image of the solvent of the universe, then that's the first evidence. Our faith, our tradition that we stand in, tells us we are them. Y'all agree? Y'all like my picture? Good. You can photo that and get all of that sister's work. Powerful sister. So first, our faith tells us we're them. Second, the second reality that tells us we are them, divine energy manifested, is the very composition of our human form. So although some of us may think of ourselves, our human body, as the soil in the ground, what we come to understand is that we are really stardust. And so for a moment, if we can imagine the beginning of creation and the imagination of the ultimate reality, placing stars in the sky, and then saying, I think from these stars comes humanity. Stardust. The power in just the stardust is what we possess as divine energy manifested. And so our physiology and some of our cultural legacy, where, like the ancient Egyptians, who always saw we are stars and we return to being stars. Or when we think about other traditions and where they say, when I look up for the person who has left this world, they are now in the stars above. Or in the songs that we hear when we sing, somewhere there is freedom in the air. I know there is a God somewhere. That we're challenged to look up and to see our place in the universe, in the cosmos. And then the third reason that we have evidence that we are divine energy manifested comes from our story. Our story tells us there is something unusual about them people. And what worked for me, and I hope some of you here may remember this, but, you know, I'm a child of the 70s. I was, you know, in college and with all the ruckus going on. And so Earth, Wind, and Fire was one of them groups, along with Stevie Wonder, that got me through. And so I asked, and I don't know, you know, if we know this, but I want us to sing a little bit of this. Can we sing a little bit? Just the chorus. Just the chorus. Yeah? Can we sing it? Y'all ready? Oh, y'all come on now. This is us.
We are people of the mighty, mighty people of the sun. In our heart lies all the answers to the truth you can't run from.
One more time, come on.
We are people of the mighty, mighty people of the sun. In our heart lies all the answers to the truth you can't run from.
One more time.
We are people of the mighty, mighty people of the sun. In our hearts lies all the answers to the truth we can't run from.
Ashe, ashe. And so that's the evidence. We're made in the image of the ultimate reality. Our physical bodies is contained in the universe. And the story that we have inherited and the stories we are creating says we are indeed a particular, unusual people. And then there's one more thing. And I'm going to add this because, we're in the context of church and faith work. There is an aspect of your being that is immortal. There is an aspect of your being that is immortal. Some of us call it soul. It is the immortal aspect of your being that is with you for eternity. It doesn't just show up when you die. And guess what? It isn't as fragile as we have been taught to think or believe. What do you mean? Well, not anybody sitting in here, of course. But in some other places I've been, folks will say, I so-and-so lied, and that's a harm to my soul. Oh, I can't go out with Tiana because, she goes to the club and that'll harm my soul. Not here. Not in this crowd. But there's some other crowds where this immortal aspect, this thing that is so powerful that it resides through eternity, is somehow damaged by some human activity. Whenever I hear things like this, I wish to ask, who benefits? Who benefits by teaching us that our soul, this immortal aspect of our being, this part of us that lasts through eternity, is so fragile that if you say a curse word, oh my God, who benefits? And so as we ponder and reflect on what our faith is to us in relationship to being and in relationship to this immortal aspect, I would invite us to add that question to our list. So whatever it is, start asking yourself, if this is what I'm going to believe, who benefits? Who is this beneficial for? And I know if we had time, we could go through a list. From the way we identify ourselves, who benefits? To the places and spaces we opt to entertain or engage, who benefits? And then if you are really serious about this wholeness and healing and liberation work, I would invite you to add a couple of adjectives to that who benefits. I don't think I need to say that. I think you got it. Is it beneficial for black people? Is it beneficial to those we claim we are serving? When I am in a group and I decide to act, whether it is giving a brother or sister a hug or inviting or approving of something, the first question I ask myself is that, who does this benefit? Because what I want to commit to, and I would invite you to join me in that commitment, is that to build this village, it has to be beneficial to everyone in the village. To build the village, to reclaim the village, our actions, our words have to be beneficial for everyone in the village. If you find that your action pushes somebody out for whatever category it is not beneficial to reclaiming the village. And I'm going to take it out of the usual things we think of, because we think of, these major things, but I want to take it to something very practical. And I was inspired by a student here from Wake Forest. In his introduction, he said he was interested in the origins, the origin story. And then he went on to say that I have hesitated in wearing African fabrics because I know that the prints have meaning. And until I know what that means, and I listened very intently, and I said, that's a village mindset. Well, we might be quick to categorize what it means to be African and what it means to be black and what it means to be on the side of truth and justice. Do we ask that kind of question of ourselves? And so I thank you for sharing that. And so when we think about what's beneficial, we will ask those kind of questions. Do I even know what this is? And if I don't, let me take time to get to know it, to study it. Let me not just pick up. And so when we build the village, that means we don't just say Ashe because everybody else is saying it. I'm going to ask somebody, what does it mean? I'm not going to run out and buy, some Ankh earrings. When I'm building the village, I'm asking, is it beneficial for me and the village to know or pretend? When I'm building the village, when I'm reclaiming. And so we got our work to do. Because some things, because we want to fit in, we just said, I'm going to start doing that. Now, again, not nobody here, because that's why you're here at the Ma'afa, because you don't do those kind of things. You don't just run out and go get something because the person next to you got it. Right? Next slide. So in this Reclaiming the Village, we said first, we acknowledge that we're divine energy manifested, that we house an immortal aspect of our being that is powerful and that is much more resilient than we can imagine. We also are saying to build and reclaim this village, there are particular ways of being that we will become unapologetic about, that we will seek to study, we will seek to listen, so that we will grow in this divine energy manifested. The other thing about this divine energy manifested, like I want to use this term we're familiar with, soul, is that it has work to do. No, it's just supposed to wait till I leave this place and go to heaven. Our soul has work to do. And what Dr. Katie Geneva Cannon taught us is to figure out what that work is. I know some of us have just opted in to just rhetorically, this gets back to my, rhetorically repeating her quote, do the work your soul must have. And you've not done no work to find out what your soul work is. And so part of the village work is to assist each one of us in identifying and embracing our soul work. Well, Mami Jihari, I'm not sure, how do I know what my soul work is? It is a communal process. You cannot determine your soul work in isolation or as an individual. In fact, in the galactic cosmos, if I am part of a cosmos, my body tells me that, I already know that there is no thing called the individual. There are persons, and I have a personhood, and my personhood is unique to my soul work. And so people get to know my person by me doing what? My soul work. And here is the reciprocity of the universe. The intent and the attention that you give your soul work elevates your body and your mind. I got to stand up on that one. The attention that you give your soul work, the nature of the soul, is to elevate your body and mind. And so the magnificent way in which we have been put together is to say, village, I need your assistance in identifying my soul work. We use other words. Some of us called it gifts. In the Dagara tradition and what we use here at St. Paul, we call it medicine. And so when we use our medicine, the work our soul must have, we actually work on the elevation of our mind and our body. So the absence of the soul work means what? No elevation of mind and body. So imagine systems that are then put in place that, first of all, deceive you on what your soul work is and tell you it's this job where I'm making $120,000, or it is this degree, or it is who I decide to partner up with. All the ways that we are misguided into understanding the soul work, which then has consequences on what? Our mind and our bodies. And we sometimes can't figure out why we keep going around and around the same thing when, you know, I'm so educated. I don't know how this keeps coming up in my life. I have been on this executive position for 10 years. I don't understand how this keeps coming up in my life. Because you are not aligned with your soul work. Now, I'm also going to make a little plug here because this work on this soul work, I am excited about journeying with Mount Airy in this soul work. And so I'm going to put this live so I kind of obligate Mount Airy, Dr. Bennett, to provide, you know, a way in which we can engage in this soul work online, as we do it at Mount Airy in person. But it's very important, if we're going to reclaim this village, that we situate space and time to realign ourselves with our soul work, and then for the community, the village, to figure out how is it that we behave as a village that affords persons to live into their soul work. Because we have to deconstruct some things. You know, when you meet somebody, you go, hi, and then the next question is, and so what do you do? There you go. What did I say? What do you do? That's a misalignment of the soul work. And so we, as a village, reclaiming means we have to also what? Reapprientate ourselves. Reapprientate ourselves. Reapprientate ourselves into how we greet each other. This is why, and I'm sure, well, he may not because he's come to talk about something else. But that sawubona, that greeting that says, I see you, is a way of reapprientating ourselves to identify one another soul to soul. The exercise we did this morning that some of us found very difficult to look at each other in the eyes, is part of the behaviors to reapprientate ourselves to the soul. And then to give our soul the space to rebel. To create ways that a village supports us in giving our soul the opportunity to rebel. What? Oh, it sounds like this. Again, I'm going to use our sacred text. You know, as one, there is a text in Ecclesiastes that we like to use at weddings, and I always see people take these ropes at the end, and they're trying to combine each other and say, this is me, you, and God, and they're threading these ropes. Did you ever read the beginning of that text? You know, I forgot. I didn't. It just came to me, so I don't have it on a slide. But the beginning of the text, and so I got seminary students here. Y'all could look it up right quick. Has this person saying, this world is messed up. And it's so messed up that I'd rather not even be born. And then he goes on to enumerate all of the challenges of the world. And says, you know what, let me take this out. Now, this is a little sidebar note. That same sacred text shows up in the glyphs in Egypt. And there is a translation that is available to you online. It's called Rebel in My Soul. And it is actually where the same conversation is happening. So did anybody find that text for me yet? What is it? Ecclesiastes 4:9-12. And so we see that text when it is always talking about in these marriage situations, but it is actually the rebel in the soul talking about the state of the world and how disgusted it is, how disgusting it is, and that they don't even want to be born. And then at the end, that's the part we hear at the weddings. What's at the end with the ropes, the braided cord? A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. And what he is suggesting in that text, or she, because we'll know who wrote it, is that the response to the state of the world is unity. How does that become about an individual marrying somebody? Who does it benefit to take a critique of the state of the world and say the only way we can resolve it is to unify, and then have you to think you're talking about 2 people getting together? That's right. It says 3 strands. And so this is the work of the village when I say taking on the responsibility To reclaim the village means that we got to look at some of the things we've been reading. We've got to look at some of the interpretations we've been using. We've got to look at how do we now see the work of the soul versus the work of, oh, this is about this one individual hooking up with this other individual, or this one person hooking up with this other. That was not what that text is about. And so I actually have a video that I created. Some of people here have seen it, just on that. So I had a question that came after I thought about where we are as a village and the work that the village has to do to reclaim our soul work for everyone, to help us understand that we all come here with medicine, gifts, if that's the term you use, talents, and that we're part of a cosmic thing. So this is my teacher, Ashe. For those of us who saw the suite last night, and those of you who are going to see it, you're in for a wonderful experience. But one of the things that Asa taught me was that, because I was there, I was out there in the streets. I was in the 70s, right? Anti-apartheid, all that. And he didn't necessarily put that down, but he reminded me that all that was addressing our pain, and that we needed to do that work. But that was not going to help our people dream dreams. And so one of the things that makes it challenging for us to imagine ourselves in our immortality is this lack of dreaming. And as I said, we those of us who are here, we got a little taste of them, the power of those dreams. So part 2 of this soul work of the village, reclaiming the village, is to do the restoring that replenishes and refuels dreaming. That replenishes and refuels dreaming, while we use our medicine to relieve the pain. What we don't do is confuse relieving the pain with dreaming. It's like, you think about some intervention programs, and they come and they get folks up, and they, I worked with adolescents who were parenting in LA, and, so we would get these young brothers and sisters who were, 13, 14 parents, year-old parents, and, they had all these skill development and education, finishing your GED and all that kind of stuff. The odd thing is that they would think that at the end of going through these trainings, that the young people would imagine something different. But there was nothing in those trainings that supported their dreams and the act and process of dreaming. Can you learn how to type? Can you learn to do shorthand so you can get a job? Can you do these algebra problems so you can get your GED? But there was no conversation about imagining and dreaming. And so reclaiming the village means that we also have to remember that using our medicine is necessary, but it is not the only thing. How does the village now support everyone in the village, every divine energy manifested, to dream, to imagine? During this week, we looked at how we could break this up into experiences for everyone who's in attendance, either online, we can go back, either online or in person. And so we categorized this, reclaiming the village, in these 4 areas. The first one you experienced this morning, the healing hut, where we're saying that healing is a communal activity. So that's intentional, to be all together and addressing healing and wholeness. The second is the remembering. And so this morning and through the week, these morning sessions will connect us to our story as it shows up. And obviously we can't, it's just 1 week, so we're not going to cover all the breadth of our story, but we're taking some particular things about our story and bringing it forth. So this first installment is to remember our story, that we are what? Divine energy manifested. And that what matters is our soul work. There is no social location. There is no social location that defines you. There is no social location that is a part of your sacred, consecrated identity. It was determined before you became human beings. And so how can a social location that is constructed in human form, whether it's I'm married or not, I have a job or not, how I identify myself gender-wise or not, these are all social locations. These are all roles you assumed when you became human. But your consecrated identity, your cosmic self, was in conversation with the universe before you became a human being. Well, how do you know that? Oh, Jeremiah, I knew you before you were in your mother's womb. I knew you. So we won't let social location define our soul work, will we? Because our soul work was never dependent on, well, if I could just get that job, if I could just get that tenure promotion, if I could just get this ordination, if I could just get, your soul work was not dependent on any of those social locations. Your soul work is the covenant that you made in spirit. Villages remind you who you are. Villages remind you. Sometimes we do it with songs. Sometimes we do it through dance. Sometimes we do it by the conversations we have while we're doing your hair. Sometimes we do it when we're cooking food. Villages remind you of who you are. And so we're intentional about that. And so after the remembering, we do restoring. And so these later morning sessions are where particular areas of our village are going to be reinterpreted such that we bring or inject new meaning into those narratives. So some narratives we have to remember. We got to get reconnected to, right? Other narratives we know, but we have a different point of reference. We are positioning ourselves differently because we are positioning ourselves in the way that benefits us. And so that means there's a shifting in those narratives. And that's what we will get later on this afternoon. Stories about, one of the stories that we like to tell is how we don't have enough. It's just not enough. Ain't enough good, decent black people in the black community. It's not enough money in the black community. Our dollars don't turn. Those are the narratives, right? Who benefits from those narratives? And so the second tier of conversations is going to show you some models of how we have reinterpreted, shift our position of these narratives. One I am tremendously excited about is the calabash is broken. That's what we said. There's an economy of the broken calabash. There is an economy of the broken calabash. Yes, we're fragmented. Yes, we're scattered. And yet, we have currency that we have failed to value that have subsequently have us to believe the narrative that we're being presented. We don't have enough, and we don't do enough. So that session of restoring is repositioning your point of reference in the narratives that we may have heard. And then I already mentioned that we actually want to take some time and you to do some mending work. And so the last set is about opportunities for us to engage in mending work. So this afternoon I have the pleasure of working with you on family rituals. You leave that session with some tools to create your own family rituals. So that's the session of mending work. And these are the dimensions by which we have organized this week. How y'all think about that? Does that work? Now, what we realized, Dr. Bradley and I, is we really put together a Powerhouse Week. So much so that we recognized that this was substantive enough to be considered education. And so we are offering continuing ed units. And there's a QR code, and I'll ask Rob to put it up, so that if you want to get some continuing ed units for this week, you can do so. And this is the beginning of the institute that Dr. Bradley mentioned. But we realize that we are in the process of creating and reimagining what education looks like that benefits us. That's what this is. Next slide. So is that clock, right? What time is it? 11:04? Okay. Oh, I'm doing good. All right. You can go to the next slide. I want to repeat this because not everybody in here may have been in the Healing Hut this morning, but we talked about in the Healing Hut this morning that we were going to be dealing with the crossroads. We're going to be unpacking that all week. We are in a crossroads. Crossroads are points of communication and choices. And so we are going to be doing our healing work at the crossroads. And so this is to let you know what's going to be happening this week. And next slide. I mentioned that we have these sessions that will be modeling what it means to be a village, because, again, those are phrases. You remember back in the day when somebody said, oh, it takes a village to raise a child. And we didn't know what we were talking about. We were just, again, repeating. So, again, that's why your point was so well taken. So now we're spending time unpacking what that means, as I've done this morning. Next slide. So here's where I guess where here at St. Paul there's a little departure, and when Dr. Bradley says about going deeper. We have sayings, we have symbols, we have aesthetics that we have assigned with what it means to be African, but we have not embraced the cosmologies that produce those aesthetics. And yes, well, Dr. Sampson said, because it's not beneficial. It is not beneficial for us to imagine that our people understood the universe and had senses of cosmic law and balance before anything came out of Europe. And so a lot of times we will take on these aesthetics without understanding the cosmologies. And what we have invited all of our presenters to do, Dr. Reginald started us off when he was preaching, and he brought in the role of nature. And so if you didn't see his sermon, please watch it. But when he brought in the role of nature in our understanding of what's possible, is a cosmological perspective, which is very different from a perspective that tells you your job is to dominate nature, right, as a human being. And so we intend to introduce to some and reinforce for others the importance of cosmologies in our understanding of what it means to reclaim this village. Next slide. I have said this in some circles, and so I want to repeat this, that this restoring is not simply a matter of changing perspective, but it is actually a technology. The way we restore, how we tell a story and how we listen, is a technology. And what we are convinced at this particular crossroads, when we are looking at something called artificial intelligence, is how the restoring illuminates our ancestors such that we gain ancestral intelligence. And that we use that technology, ancestral intelligence, to map out the success and thriving of our village and our own personhood. And so the restoring that you will engage is twofold. Yes, it's to give you another point of reference, but it's also to hopefully influence how you tell and how you listen. How you tell and how you listen. Oh, you lost me. I'm not sure what that means. It's as simple as somebody can invite you over to their house, and depending on how they invite you, you will take the invitation seriously or not. So if they just say, you say, oh, you're new. Oh, I should come over and visit. And they go, yeah, sure, come on. It's very different from that person who stops and pauses and looks at you and says, I would love for you to come. So how we tell our story is just as important as how we are listening. And so we hope that during this week you are paying attention to how the stories are being told, as well as listening. It is our spiritual technology, restoring. Next slide. There is something that makes this restoring, this spiritual technology, subversive. So I need to say that because I know sometimes, especially as good Christians, we just want to love everybody, and we don't want anybody to get upset with us, and so we try to tell the story, well, you actually mispronounced my name, and we say it's so nice and sweet. If the person goes, oh, okay, I'm sorry, and nothing thinks much of it, because we don't stand with the pronunciation or the naming as important, but when we understand who we are as people, what you call me is what you invoke out of me. What you call me is what you invoke out of me. So no, I will not let you mispronounce Itihari. You will learn to say it. I will be very patient and we'll work it out together. But what you call me is what you draw out of me. And so when we understand that, it's also going to mean our disposition in reclaiming this village means we got to have a little confidence, y'all. We got to be a little courageous. Because this restoring is an assault to the existing narratives that keep us from recognizing our divine energy manifested. So this restoring is an assault to the systems and ways of being that block, interfere, negate you seeing yourself as divine. And so when you are assaulting anything, there's a defense, right? And so you got to be ready to fight back. You got to be ready to fight back. So we might be in one environment where you could say, Sawubona, and it's embraced. But you will be in another environment, Dr. Brawley, and they'll email you and say, I'm sorry, I can't come because I'm not African. And I heard y'all using Sawubona. That's an African word. The courageous confidence says, that's right. It is African. And yes, we are African. And I'm unapologetic about it. And so when we do this restoring, just know it will put you in some uncomfortable situations. But you are divine energy manifested. You are made from the same thing as the stars. You are in the image of the one known by many names. What you afraid of? So we're ready to fight. We're ready to respond. And we know that our restoring is an assault to countering the assault on us. Self-defense. All right? Okay. All right. Y'all okay? All right. Okay, so I think I'm coming to my last few. So I was restoring. So we should get to unpacking now the mending work. And I wanted to share a clip from one of my dear sisters. She's an ancestor now, but she was the one who recognized me as a keeper of ritual, and because she is herself a keeper of ritual. And I just like the way that she explains this medicine, this gifting, this soul work. And so I think the next slide, and Rob, if you I don't know if you might have to adjust the sound.
But what is important is that we have to remember that we are a part of something big. And whatever that is, it is very important to remember that we are not just a tourist wandering this realm, but that we are here for a specific purpose. And that calling is what leads you to this conference. What is it? So the word to gift in my tradition is the same as the word to bless. To gift is the capacity to go into that sacred place within oneself, to be able to bring that very thing that is going to shower the other with goodness for their journey. And so to gift them is to bless them. And so the gift of mothering is the gift of blessing someone with something sacred, something that is healing, something that is nourishing, something that is life-giving. Because when you bless, you have breathed a particular kind of life into the person, which then becomes like the food that will feed their spirit. And that's why, even if you have one person who has ever given you a blessing in your life, you have been gifted with something that nobody else can give. And, when I was growing up, they used to say that and go, yeah, right. But as I think about, things that happen in my life, and I think about some of the people who have blessed me, thank you, with something, and I go, oh, yes, I have to go back and say thank you again, because that is meaningful.
So that was Sister Sabonfu Somé. We give thanks for her presence. And I wanted to end this mending work part with her, because sometimes we think mending work means I got to go sit with Mama Ichihara and learn how to do ritual. Or I have to go and sit with Dr. Reginald so I can learn how to preach sacred memory. And the list can go on. And what Sabonfu reminds us is that the moment you decide to gift is where the transferring of the medicine, the transferring of the blessing. So it doesn't look like one thing. It is your thing. It is the thing that you came here with. She said it. It's the thing you came here with. It's not something you acquired after you got here. So our journey in doing mending work is to reclaim ourselves. Who am I before I became somebody's friend, somebody's wife, somebody's sister, somebody's brother, somebody's cousin, all the roles? Who am I? who is this person that negotiated with the universe and decided to become a person? And Mbongi reminds us is that is what we bring to one another in the village. We are not so far removed from that. Once upon a time when we were colored, you could go into a church house and there would be this 4-year-old and some elder in the church, when everybody's trying to tell that 4-year-old to sit down, would allow that 4-year-old to come up and sit on the front. Because that village member saw who that person is. And they said, oh, come on, come on. Once upon a time when we were colored, we would be in our families and we would see the children and we say, ooh, she just like Aunt Pearl. And so they would call forth that ancestor in that child. Long before that child became an adult, that child would say, you know, people used to tell me I'm just like Aunt Pearlie. Let me go find out who is Aunt Pearlie. And that person would begin to go talk to people in the family. Once upon a time when we were colored, we recognized that everybody came with something. And it was our job to figure it out. It was the village job to figure out who you be. And it was the village job to remind you when you lost yourself who you be. And so as I close and open for comments, if we have time, I want to put forth a village way of being that reminds us of who we are. So in Dagara, there's a custom that when you come to this earth, the village listens for your song. The village listens for your song and learns your song. And when you go through any important thing in life, you grow up as a child and you become 12 or 13 and it's your rite of passage. You are an adult and you decide that you want to build a family. And even when you transition from this world to return to the stars, the village sings your song. Someone who is your true friend knows your song. And they will ensure that upon your departure from this world to the next, the village knows your song. Again, once upon a time when we were colored, at homegoings, the village would sing that song of the person going home. And so I invite us to get to know each other. That as you journey this week, ask somebody, what's your song? And that we might even decide to commit ourselves to say, you know what, now that I know it, I will remember it. Wherever you are, you can reclaim the village. It's not just here in Brooklyn. It's wherever you are. Ashe? Ashe? Asheo.
Stay right there. We have time
Okay.
for Q&A.
Oh, okay.
All right, one more time. Let's give Mama Itihari. You could do better than that. She framed the entire week for us. We have about 7 minutes or so for Q&A for those. Perhaps you want to make even a comment about what you've heard, or how your expectations have grown, or perhaps you just want to just share how you're feeling about what you just heard. We do have microphones. Just stand up and we'll give the mic to you. Stay right where you are. We'll come to you.
Hello, just want to thank you again. All of the thoughts are still going around in my mind. But one thing I wrote down I would like if you would give a little more information about your consecrated identity. That hit me. I would like to hear more about that.
So we have in various cosmologies an understanding of the order of the universe. And the order of the universe says that before we chose to become human, we were spirit, and that we were in conversation with the universe, the cosmos. And so depending on the tradition, they may name certain deities or names for divinity, but the concept of having a purpose, an identity did not begin with the form of being human. That there was a time that we were together in the world with the Creator, with the deities, and we decided when we would come to the earth, who we would come through. And so in some traditions, you will have rituals and celebrations about the birth of children being returning and welcoming them, assuming that they existed somewhere else. And in other traditions, it will be that the parents are grateful that the spirit chose them to come through, and that all of the mishaps and challenges are by design. And so in those traditions, you would have language where people would say, what was the lesson that you decided you needed to get? We also have, through the work of an anthropologist, Lorenz Graham, has made the connections of those kinds of understandings of the universe to those of us who were brought here. There's one story, a children's book I encourage you to get. It's called Every Man's Heart Lay Down, where he has tracked the story. And it's the story of Jesus, but it shows Jesus as the little pickaninny, in conversation with God. God is like vexed with the world, and God wants to destroy the world. And the little pecan says, don't destroy the world, I'll go. And then God tells the little pecan, you go, the people gonna harm you. The people gonna kill you. And the little pecan goes anyway. And so that's an example of this conversation in the cosmos, right, that anthropologist found both in Liberia and in the Gullah. Mm-hmm. Oh, the book, Every Man's Heart Lay Down, Lorenz Graham.
Hello, hi. Thank you so much for that. My head, my heart, everything is full. I see, I'm definitely gonna have to sit with this. I'm sitting with it now. But my question that I have for you, and in some ways a resistance to this notion of going to the village to understand personhood, if I understand the order of what the process, if you will. Because some of us come from a village that was toxic and destructive and defined you a certain way, even from childhood, right? Those of us who have hurt from church. So I just, what I wonder is, how does one connect with the village that you're saying we need to go to remember or to get a sense of our personhood, because it's a communal thing, right? Because for me, my steps instantly became individualistic in order to survive those environments, right? In some ways, that's reflected in my professional life. So the notion of even being communal professionally is opening up myself, you know, in a way, like Audre Lorde said, you have to know yourself, otherwise you'll be consumed by how others define you. So I just wonder, how do we locate community and village? Although I found mine, by the way, in Pink Road Chronicles, without a doubt.
Ashe. Ashe, thank you for that question. That is an excellent, excellent question, and I'm sure you're not the only ones who think that, because our memory of village is one that has been constructed without our benefit in mind. So if we're alive today, we are operating in the villages that were constructed without our best interest in mind. So again, this is where the difference between relief from the pain and the dreaming, because we are operating in places of pain because these constructs were not constructed with our benefit in mind. So one of the tasks that we have to do is imagine another reality, a village that was not constructed without our best interest in mind. And here is the beautiful thing about being dim. Because our thoughts become the reality. It always has been that way. Somebody thought of these toxic relationships, toxic institutions, toxic organizations, toxic churches. Somebody thought, it was a thought before it became a being. So you mentioned Pink Robe Chronicles. I can guarantee you that was a thought before it became a being. And it had to go through a deconstruction of the village it thought was for them. Ain't that right? So part of the village, reclaiming the village, means making room for the deconstruction, making room for the mending, and making room for reimagining. So we will release, we did it this way last year, we need to do it this way this year. Because that is not reimagining the village. So I was talking to Marjorie last night, and Marjorie is, you'll hear from her Wednesday. She's one of the original producers and writers of the suite. You know what she said, Dr. Bennett? She said, she was right where you were. She said, although I can see parts of the past, Ma'afas, I saw something totally different. Did y'all see it? Because y'all been around. She said that. So in my mind, right then, that was the confirmation we needed, because we did a Sankofa. We went back and we picked up something, but it was reimagined. So that's the task we have, Akila. We got to go back and fetch, fix some stuff, deconstruct some stuff, and then reimagine. Ashe?
All right.
Okay. So my question is, with all this going on in the world, how do we teach our children to take the medicine and use the dream and bring the dream and start to dream? Because a lot of them can't dream anymore.
I love that. How do we help our children to first take the medicine? So that means we're acknowledging what? That our children are in pain.
Right.
That's the first thing. So we're not going to be labeling them and giving them misidentification because they're in pain. That's the first thing. And let's work this together, can't we? I don't want to say. So first we're acknowledging that they're in pain. Do they have medicine? Yes. We all have medicine. So we're going to figure out the medicine they need for the pain, but we're also going to do something else, which is to help them know their own medicine. So when we talk about the work of the village, and this is what we're talking about, work in the village now. So the work of the village, I know that this medicine is needed, but I also have to work on helping draw out, touch in Sakasansu that they know their own medicine. So if we're working on the pain, we are tapping into them drawing out their own medicine. What do you think is going to happen next? They realize who they are, and then they contribute to the village, because we're going to make sure the village makes room for what? Their contribution. We're not going to tell them you're too young, because we understand that their medicine they came here with, right? So this is the behavior and work of the village. We will have to recode, because some of us, not anybody in here, of course, we'll be thinking, oh, they can't do that. They're too young. All that affects, then we are becoming healthier as they become healthier. Ashe, ashe. Yes. Thank you for that.
All right. Thank you so much. One more time, Mama Itihara. We're going to change gears just a little bit. We want you to know where you're sitting and to know a little bit about the history of East New York. At one time, East New York was known as the murder capital of the state of New York. It is no longer that, in part of the work of this community, this church, St. Paul. And we want to share just a snippet of an interview with the former council member, Charles Barron, about East New York, the history of East New York, and kind of bring you up to speed to the ways in which it is being transformed. This is a form of restoring. Rob? My name is Pastor David Keith Brawley. I'm the pastor of the St. Paul Community Baptist Church in the East New York section of Brooklyn. And joining me today in this Ma'afa moment is Assemblyman Charles Barron. I'm delighted to be with you this afternoon to have a conversation about this real sacred space that we're standing in right now. But before I do that, could you just talk to us about how this district has grown and improved over the years?
Well, first of all, Pastor Brawley, it is an honor to be with you and to be with my brothers and sisters viewing the Ma'afa. That is the cultural hub, Ma'afa, of the East New York community, and we can only rise as high as we know who we are and where we came from. So the East New York community has made serious transitions. In the 1960s, this was an all-white community. Matter of fact, 1960 was like Polish, Irish, Italian, Jews, Germans. There were no blacks here. And then by 1966, the 85% whites left, and then black and brown people by 1966, 85% of the community was black and brown. Wow. But what happened is when the whites left, the government and municipal services left. When the whites left, then there was lots, burnt down lots. Many of them hired arsonists to burn down their developments and their buildings and their homes so they can collect the insurance.
Wow.
So East New York was burnt out by 68, 69, 70. It was like burnt out. It was drugs and people doing drugs in lots. And before we get into our crime, this was also the place of Murder, Inc. when the white folk were here. So there goes the neighborhood. But Murder, Inc. was in East New York, and that was the most notorious gangsters around. But then it turned to that. Then there's been a revival of East New York, and honesty compels me to say, because of you and St. Paul's and because of the work we've done, then East New York now has some of the greatest housing developments, the most affordable housing developments in the city. Most people are moving here now. When I first came in 2002, East New York was 67% black. Now it is 76% black. Then it was 6% white. Now it's 3.4% white. I didn't run them out. They left on their own. And then we had Latinos with 22%, and they went down to 16%. So while other communities were being gentrified because of our work, East New York, at least my part of the district, is not gentrified.
It's regenerated.
It's regenerated. That's a good one. It's regenerated, actually. So we've seen 12,000 units of affordable housing. You had a lot to do with that. And we've seen new parks, 4 or 5 new parks renovated. We're going to get a brand new library, $31 million. We have a $12 million youth center that we saw come into East New York, and 3 new schools, $100 million project. You're involved in that too, in one of the schools. So East New York is on a revival. Now we're trying to reclaim, recapture, and revive our culture.
So talk a little bit about that. So St. Paul Community Baptist Church, you mentioned the Ma'afa, and as always, I give respect and honor to Dr. Johnny Ray Youngblood, who started us on this journey about 26 years ago. And as you know, we've been sharing the Ma'afa with the entire world. And today, we're in this sacred space, and we're calling this a Ma'afa moment, right here in East New York. Now, many people don't know about this. But this is a sacred space.
Very much so.
And you've introduced me and others to this space, and you have coronated it. Can you tell the story about where we're standing right now?
Yeah, this is a powerful Ma'afa moment, a powerful Ma'afa moment. This burial ground right here, this whole area in 1690, this whole area was forest. There was no terrain. It was all forest. And the Dutch, who took over Manhattan in 1625, 1626, and they called it Manhattan after the Mahatta indigenous people and the Lenape indigenous people. And then the English came in after the Dutch called it New Amsterdam. The English then came with the Duke of York in 1664, and they took New York and named it New York. But moving up here, it was around 1690 that the Dutch was more on the west. We were on the east. They were more in Brownsville. And they took that over, and they called it Old Lots, the Old Lots of Flatbush. And it was really Brownsville. And this guy, John Brownstone, the white guy, bought up some of the farms from the Dutch, and he was named after him. So a white man, so all you brothers are saying Brownsville, it's a white man's name. But anyway, so that's the history. So then they wanted to build new lots, New Lots Avenue, new lots. Let's come east where we are now and build new lots. So they cleared out the Canarsie so-called Indians, they cleared out the Rockaway so-called Indians, they cleared out the Lenape, took their land, and then went and stole us from Africa to build it. So when we got here, we were pastoralists. We knew about agriculture, which was the big thing then. We taught the Dutch how to deal with their farms and agriculture because they were more fur traders. They were killing animals and getting their fur, and that's how they were making their economy. It was the Africans that built the foundation of East New York. Your ancestors built the foundation of East New York. This is your community. So when they did that, they chopped all of the stuff down, the trees, and they built their schools. There was a school in the late 1800s called PS 72 that was built on here. They built the road that New Lots Avenue.
This is New Lots right here.
Right, they built that road, cleared all of that stuff out, irrigated stuff, and by 1835, our people built the agricultural foundation of East New York, which was one of the most powerful and economically flourishing foundations in the country. was by our African ancestors. And when they died from all of that work, this spot that we standing on was a burial ground. But because of the segregation and the racism, we had our remains buried more toward Livonia. The whites had their remains buried more toward New Lots. So after a while, some of the Dutch were saying, wait a minute, you know, that's just a little too many Africans are being buried here. We want our ancestors out. So they took their ancestors, reinterred them across the street. They removed our remains, put them on the roadside on Livonia, and destroyed them. Let them just evaporate. After a while, they just disintegrated, took theirs out, and put them across the street.
So they desecrated our bones.
They desecrated our bones. And then, but some still remain because parts of them, they didn't get everything out. So we decided that when we started to put the millions of dollars to renovate this park, we said, when you do your excavation, if you find any of our remains, stop. Because we're going to reinter them. This is what you see here. They found some. And we want to thank Bell Funeral Home. They did a wonderful job of taking the remains and actually housing them for a while and dealing with the Parks Department, and then they helped on the reinterment of them. So what we're standing over now is the reinterment of our remains. And we're going to use this whole side of the park now, not for recreation, but for culture. And we're going to have this as a memorial side, so we can tell our people that when they took our bones out and they put theirs over there, East New York's foundation was built by African people who were never paid. They were enslaved. And it was the African people that gave John R. Pitkin. John R. Pitkin came from Connecticut, and when he came here and bought some land from the Dutch, he wanted to move it to the industrial era and not just agricultural. So he started bringing in factories and all of that. He wasn't successful, but he began that. And once the Depression hit, at that time it was a Great Depression, not the one from 1930s, but in the 1830s. But in 1835, he said, I want it to be like New York City. So since we're east of New York, John R. Pitkin, which Pitkin Avenue is named after, named it East New York. And before that, it was New Lots. So if you look on a lot of the maps, it's going to say New Lots. But a lot of names are named after enslaved Africans, but we're proud to say that we changed Skank Park. This was named Skank Park, and we changed that to Sankofa Park, meaning go back and study your history so you can go forward and plan your future. This is Sankofa Park, officially Sankofa Park, by the New York Parks Department. So we're very proud of making that transition and letting the people know of East New York that your ancestors built this
we would call this at St. Paul's Sacred Memory.
That's right.
And so thank you for kind of doing this and bringing us all together in community so that we can reflect on this story and recollect and renew ourselves so we can continue to do the work. I think there's another site you wanted to take us.
Yes, I want us to now, if we can come and go look at the burial ground where they put the names and the stone heads of the enslavers, so we can take a look at that, and also how we changed this to African Burial Ground Square officially.
Okay, let's do that.
Let's do it.
I'm here on location in East New York with Assemblyman Charles Barron, who's giving us a virtual tour and a history lesson on what is now called the African Burial Ground. And Assemblyman, what's this behind me, and what does it represent?
Well, you know, as we continue this great Ma'afa moment, which is the history of East New York, unearthing the truth of East New York, this is the cemetery that the Dutch built for theirs. Across the street, we were both Africans and the Dutch sharing a cemetery. But over here tells the history of when the Dutch came, and almost like just the Indians were just totally wiped out or sent to Long Island. Canarsie and so-called Indians, the Lenape, the Algonquin speakers, and then the Rockaway Indians as well. So on this land, that they wanted to build a school for their children, they built it atop of our burial ground.
Wow.
And it was called PS 72, and around 1890 to late 1800s, they built PS 72.
So you're saying they knowingly built a school on top?
Desecrated.
Wow.
That's right. Knowingly built it on top of our burial ground. And then the library, after they demolished the school, the library was then built in 1957 over the same burial ground. And then they built the park, Skank Park. Do you know they had the nerve to call it Skank Park after the biggest slaveholder? As we go back to the burial ground, you see the name Van Siclen.
Yeah.
For Van Siclen Avenue.
Right.
Skank Avenue is also, his lot is in here as well, and his tombstones are in here as well. Van Sinderen is in here. You know, most of the names of our streets are the Dutch enslavers.
Wow.
And some of the English enslavers. So we walk by this burial ground every day and not knowing that these were your enslavers and your ancestors were desecrated. Their burial ground was desecrated and stuff was built over it. So when we put in a couple of millions, we meaning Councilmember Inez Barron and myself, put in millions to have the park renovated, we said when you do the excavation, if you find anything, stop.
Right.
And we made them honor that. And as you saw prior, the burial reinterment of our ancestors. And now that's going to be a whole memorial part of the park. And then the other park will be renovated for the children, the basketball courts, the playground area. And then this library is going to be demolished. And you and I are going to work together to make sure that on the top floor that we have our history, our artifacts about Africa, who we are as an African people. And so I'm very excited about that and this particular area here. So this whole area is a very historical area, and because of our work, it's going to be culturally remembered. It's going to be like a cultural hub. So every time we do the Ma'afa and we remember our larger history, we also remember our particular history of East New York.
I want to thank you, Assemblyman, and the council member for, you know, your work to regard and retain sacred memory in our community. And thank you for all that you do for our community. And I thank you for just taking some time out of your day to help us in this virtual tour and this Ma'afa moment. Thank you.
Well, it's been my honor, and I feel it a special privilege to be a part of the great Ma'afa moment.
Thank you. Let us stand together as we honor our ancestors.
Good morning and namaste. Life is the greatest mystery, and we acknowledge the Creator and the ancestors, giving honor to the sustainer of life, who has made us all from the same seed and who our ancestors knew in the ancient days before ships could sail. Oludmare, the Supreme, Ashe. Nyami, the Eternal One, Ashe. Olarun, the owner of heaven, Ashe. Mawu, nothing is greater, Ashe. Nzambi, sovereign of the universe, Ashe. Chukwu, the great spirit, Ashe. To the spirit guides who watched our ancestors sail across the waters into a new and hostile land, Ashe. My name is Paulette Bailey. I am the daughter of Ruel and Linda Bailey. I am the granddaughter of Vera, Beatrice Adlam, Nathaniel Davey, Lynette Reed, and Eric Nesbitt. We are here to acknowledge the ancestors of Sankofa Park, Ashe. To our familiar and immediate ancestors, please call out your ancestors' names. Ashe. To the element of mineral, bringing forth remembrance, communication, storytellers, wisdom keepers, asking questions, keeper of memory, Ashe. We are the children of a stolen nation that look back over the oceans. Our ancestors crossed, hearing your voice, guiding us to remember, Ashe. Let us lift the children we are stewards over as we stand in the gap for them, Ashe. For the children that are a part of this village, the children that will observe the work of this community, and those children inside us, may they be healed through this work, Ashe. To our children, the village and our community, we are here to remember, to recommit, to reimagine, and to renew ourselves for our community and the families that we serve. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe-o. I am back. Thank you.
Selection. You may be seated.
Inside you, there's a nation, a people living way down deep, right here inside outside, but it's inside you. There's a golden key to all your tomorrows. Open up to a world so wide. You can turn the tide, see what's inside. You're a chosen generation. Get ready for the coronation. You better get ready. I'm preparing for the celebration. See what's inside you. Open up to a world so wide. You can turn the tide, see what's inside. You're a chosen generation. Get ready for the coronation. You better get ready. I'm preparing. You ought to prepare for the celebration. See what's inside you.
Ashe. Y'all could do a little bit better than that. Come on back out for a moment. Come on back out. I just want to appreciate our vocalists today. Extremely gifted. Many of them, most of them travel globally singing. And we're just honored to have you here in this space honoring our ancestors. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Come on, put your hands together one more time. The wreath that you see behind me is also, it's a picture of what is in the vestibule. We will place that wreath at Sankofa Park this week as we honor our ancestors. And so what I'd like to do now is invite you to just walk the hallways. This is actually a museum. As you walk the hallways, if you go out the doors, you will notice the DNA sign. And if you just start from there, you can walk around in a self-guided tour and engage our history and our culture. And we'll also take you on the lower level as well. On the lower level at 12:30, our culinary team, staff, you didn't even know we had one, right? Yeah, we did. Our culinary team and staff has prepared a lunch for you for free. That was the loudest amen, Mama E.T. Hart, we got all day. All right. And I didn't even know it was going to be for free. I thank God for, y'all give it up for the fiscal team. Y'all give it for the fiscal team. All right. And so we're just honored to have institutions that we're partnering and journeying with this week. And I'm going to ask for this segment every day if we can have a seminarian come, bless the food, and perhaps even bring greetings from your institution. Samiko, I'm going to put you on the spot. I know that you are now at McCormick Theological Seminary finishing off your Doctor of Ministry degree. Would you come and bless the food for us, please?
creator of the universe, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time. Now bless the food that we're about to receive for the nourishment of our body. Bless our minds, our spirit, and our souls to receive it. And let us go out and let what manifests inside us be provided for them and them. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right. The time is yours to digest all you've received in this morning session. We begin the next session at, is it 2 o'clock? Somebody tell me. 1:30. 1:30. So you have time to eat, refresh yourself, make some new friends, get to know them. Y'all wasn't even paying attention when I said that. Get to know them. Just take some time to get to know them. To our online family, we'll see you back at 1:30. God bless you.